The views expressed on the Midvale Main Street Theatre podcast do not necessarily reflect the views of the Midvale Main Street Theatre, its owners, advertisers, or volunteers.
The second you can be the stupidest character in the world on stage, then you can do anything.
Mm-hmm. How Jason attacks a group of children.
And I hear from students all the time, they're like, I learned not to care what other people think of me because that doesn't matter. And they're singing this like beautiful song about Jesus, and I'm like, anger, and they're like, ah! Cutoffs or would differentiate between a group of people on stage just drunkenly singing karaoke or something that was meticulous and together. When we get what we get at auditions and so on, I get excited because when they're like, well, that's not maybe how it's normally done, I'm like, that excites me. You don't get to the perfect unless you get through the failure, because the failure is what teaches you what to do different the next time.
Line! Hey guys, what's going on? This is Michael Howell. Sorry, I just am trying to shake up the entrances here, and it apparently failed miserably. But yeah, hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Midvale Main Street Theatre podcast. My name is Michael Howell, and as always, we do have a couple of bits of news items, and then we will jump into the episode, to use my exact same wording. Okay, first up, and exciting for me, is Mamma Mia opens in just 3 days. It opens on Friday, so yeah, get super excited about it. I've actually been given the opportunity to run the microphones for the show, so I've been able to see bits and pieces of the show as much as I can when I'm not following along in my script like a crazy person, but it's an awesome show. First of all, you're going to be blown away when you come into the theater and see the set itself. Tammy's put so much effort into the set, into the lighting, into even just the stage itself, and you'll see what I mean when you come see the show. But it's so exciting, super insane, and I'm so happy for everybody who's going to see the show and be able to just take in the performances, the music, everything like that. It's such a fun show. Everyone on stage, you can tell, is just pouring their heart out. They love the show so much, and that's really what makes a great show for me. So, yeah, just get super excited. It's going to be awesome for sure. Okay, and next is Addams Family Jr. did get cast, and unfortunately, I wasn't able to find any cast list online. I maybe was looking in a wrong place or something, but I do know a couple of the names that have been cast. Just actually some of the Mamma Mia performers that I know are in the show and who got cast. So it's very exciting for them. I know that Tammy is already going wild with ideas and everything like that. So it's going to be a great show as well. There's not much else to say about it, just because I don't have that cast list, like I say, but it's going to be super fun. If you guys are parents, by the way, anybody in this audience who doesn't have kids in the youth theater program, it's such an awesome opportunity. I'll take a second to talk about it just because it's something that's really unparalleled here in Utah, because most youth theater camps charge kids to come out and do the shows and everything like that. And Tammy has said, no, I don't want to charge people to have their kids perform. This is something that we should all be able to do. So she's kept it completely free of charge. So your children would be able to come in and get a great, theater experience free of charge. And also, of course, learn so much about performing and, all the aspects of that go into it. So, if you have kids that aren't currently, doing these junior shows, look out for the next audition and definitely, sign up for a slot and everything like that, because, it is unparalleled here in the state. Okay, and that's that. So this week I have on Jason Campbell, music director extraordinaire. Yeah, I was so excited to talk to him, not only because he was, asking and wanted to be on the show, which is always awesome for me, but just because he has such a great perspective and he's so talented. It was just so cool to pick his brain about a couple things. We talked first about his early life and growing up and what really kind of brought him into choir and ultimately to theater, which was definitely fascinating. It's definitely not the traditional path that you see from these performers that have been doing it all their lives, but after that, we also talked about his music education degree and ultimately what he's doing now as a career. And he is teaching choir and theater to junior high students. And that's very fascinating. He actually had to build this theater program that he's doing from the ground up. They didn't have a theater program at all at the school that he was teaching. So fascinating to kind of figure out how he was able to go about and do that and what is most important to him in teaching these children. And then finally, we'll talk about his Midvale quote-unquote career, where he's acted in a show, but he's also music directed plenty of shows, and we'll get into all of that for sure. But yeah, as they say at Midvale, sit back, relax, and enjoy today's episode with Jason Campbell. Here he is! It's Jason Campbell! How are you, dude?
I'm so good. How are you?
Good. I'm doing good. Thanks for stopping by, man. This is really cool. I'm so
excited.
Yeah, absolutely. We've been talking about doing this forever, and it's just Mamma Mia's kicked all of our butts.
It really has. So
yeah. Well, cool. Thank you for stopping by the theater, I guess.
Right.
But yeah. My guest this week is Jason. As you can hear, he's awesome. He's done a couple shows here, mostly as a music director, which is really cool. Definitely a change of pace from what we've had before. But he's also acted in a show here and everything, and we'll get into all of that. But it's really cool, really exciting. But like I said, starting these things are super weird and uncomfortable. So. Well, let me just ask, how's Mamma Mia been going for you?
It's going really good. This cast is remarkable. They pick up on things really quick. They're super talented. There's a great vocal energy from them. I've worked with a really, really remarkable cast, but this cast, you give them a note, they fix it right away. They come back better. There's just this energy of improvement on stage that is like this competitive nature of like, we're going to do it and we're going to amp it up, and then they keep making it better than the other person in a way that's productive, not like putting themselves above others, but in a way of like, oh, remember to do this, and then everybody like does it, and it's pretty remarkable to see. So I'm excited to see how they feed off of audience energy and all that kind of stuff too, because it's just going to be awesome. Sure.
Awesome. Well, is that something that is rare for you? Is like, do casts usually have that energy, do you feel, or?
Yes and no. I mean, sometimes you have to get after casts and remind them a few times, and then you have your come to Jesus talks and say, okay, if you want to do this, you got to make sure you're the ones that do it themselves, and those kind of things. But to have it at this level, I think is really rare, just because they start fixing things as I'm writing a note, and then I have to go back and erase the note because they saw that I was doing something like, it must be this, and then I go fix it. And so I don't know, there's just this collective energy that's remarkable that everyone's just riding on. That's like, oh, let's do it. And then they all do it. There's usually a couple that you have to like convince and get on board with it. But this cast just is going.
Cool.
It's awesome. I love it.
That's awesome. Well, and cool. We'll talk about Mamma Mia a little more later, but yeah, this is your episode and I just want to kind of hear your story. So if you're all right, let's go ahead and jump into it. Cool. Well, Jason, I think I got this right. You were born in Wyoming. Is that correct?
I was actually born in Logan, Utah.
Okay.
I grew up in Wyoming.
Gotcha.
So I don't remember anything of my childhood, Logan, because we moved to Wyoming when I was about 4 or 5.
Okay. Gotcha.
And then stayed there till I was 19, 20. So that is most of my grown up life. But technically, I was born in Logan, Utah.
Sure. Gotcha. Do you know why you guys moved up to Wyoming?
Yeah. My dad his degree is in music therapy, which is really cool.
That's really cool.
But he got a job as an occupational therapist at a facility in Wyoming.
Gotcha.
And they also have really good hospital systems, which is where my mom works. And so she works in the educational department of the hospital, just teaching the nurses of things and like that. And so they both happened to get a job in the town of Lander, Wyoming, where we grew up. And I just remember the conversation, even though it was like 4 or 5, when they go, we're going to Wyoming. We're all like, where's Wyoming?
Gotcha. Sure. Well, I'm sure that was that a hard transition for you or anything, or?
I don't think so. I mean, like I said, I was so young that I don't remember a whole lot of it. And it was like right before we started kindergarten. So like the transition worked out just fine.
Yeah. It's perfect time.
That's when we started school. We lived on a ranch, even though we weren't ranchers and did anything on a ranch. We just happened to be on a ranch and have all kinds of space. But
did you guys have animals and everything like that?
I remember we had a conversation of should we buy a boat or should we get horses? And for some reason we chose horses, which I loved.
Is the wrong choice.
Right. But we didn't use them. Like, I think my dad rode them once a year to like convince himself that the purchase was worth it.
Right.
And then we're all like, we could have been on a lake right now on a boat.
Man.
So, and I love them. They're beautiful horses. They had
Sure.
like 5 acres to run around on, but we literally just spent money to get hay to feed them.
Gotcha. Wow.
And look at them. That's
Yeah.
all we had horses for.
I mean, it is cool. To be fair, it is cool to say, hey, I just have some horses at home.
Right.
You know, but
right.
yeah. Anyway, well, that's really cool.
Yeah.
So this is a weird question, but
for
how would your parents describe young 5-year-old Jason Campbell?
In a lot of different ways.
Okay.
I have weird random memories of my brother and I, because I have a twin brother.
Oh, I didn't know that. Cool.
Who is nothing like me. We don't look anything alike. In fact, when I remember in 6th grade, we both went to turn in an art project, and we'd been in art, our whole elementary career.
Right.
And we both turned in an art project, and the teacher goes, wait, you guys have the same last name? And we're like, uh-huh. And she's like, are you guys related? And we're
Wow.
like, yeah, we're brothers. And she's like, but you're in the same grade. Yeah, because we're twins. And
Yeah.
she's like, what? And so he doesn't do anything theatrical, didn't do anything sport-wise, was played video games, which is great, but very opposite of who I am.
Sure.
And I mean, for growing up as well, like my mom went to gym, like gymnastics gym, because she was in gymnastics, and my sister and I did gymnastics.
Wow.
And like all of our vacations were based on where nationals was.
Gotcha.
So he was kind of
Absolutely.
just brought along as part of it. So
Right.
I think he didn't feel really connected with the family, which looking back, like we didn't really do anything to help him feel connected within the family, because it was all based on what we were doing. And my dad
Right.
was just like, whatever. That's my dad. So I went in 5 different directions, but my parents would call my young Jason. I did a lot. I did a ton.
Awesome.
I blame it now on my ADD. That's not something I really have. I just self-diagnose that because I
Sure.
get distracted really easy.
Gotcha.
But I like to do everything. I like to do it all. I remember my mom, I don't think, wanted me to start gymnastics. The only reason I did is because she brought me to the gym once, because I don't think she could find a babysitter. And then I got really interested into it. And then I just started going. And then she's like, oh, crap, damn it. I have to now teach
Gotcha.
him these things.
Gotcha.
And so I did a lot. I was very interested in a lot of things and wanted to try everything.
That's awesome.
So I definitely appreciate it now, because I think I'm more well-rounded because I did a bunch of stuff.
Definitely.
And I tell this to my students, like, if you do a bunch of things, it teaches you to prioritize, because you have to.
Sure.
When you do one thing and have all this time, you give excuses of, I can just do this later. But if you're doing a bunch of stuff, you're like, I have a half an hour and I have to finish that in a half an hour, so I have to do it in that half an hour.
Right.
And
Gotcha.
it trains you to organize yourself. And so I do appreciate the fact that I got to do that. The nice thing about Wyoming is you don't have to pigeonhole into certain things, because there's not as many people.
I was
They
gonna
want
say,
people and everything. So
you have
they're
to
like,
be-
please do this, please do that too, and you can do
Right.
it. So yeah.
Sure. Gotcha. Cool. So gymnastics was your first love, or was it just kind of you dove into everything?
Oh,
all
by
at
far, it
once?
was my first love.
'Kay,
By
perfect.
far.
Cool.
Like I did gymnastics, and then I did trampoline and tumbling is where it filtered into. And I think I mainly did that because I was doing gymnastics and I was swinging giants, which is on the bars, was where they're like hanging on the bar and they go all the way around.
Right,
hanging on the
gotcha.
bar. And I remember I peeled off of the bar and I like landed on my head on like
Oh
a
my
very
gosh.
thin mat too.
Oh no.
And my coach's response was, whoops, because he didn't support me. And I'm like,
Jeez.
and that's the reason.
Yeah.
I'm done with gymnastics.
Wow.
And I really only liked vault and floor when I was doing gymnastics. And so
Okay.
that transferred well into trampoline and tumbling.
Right. Sure.
And I did that. I won nationals twice on double mini,
Wow.
which sounds like a really cool thing. And it really is.
Yeah.
But there was like 4 other people in my age group.
Gotcha.
So I really won nationals against 4 other people.
Hey, beat those guys for sure.
But
So
the best thing about that is the year before I won, I broke my femur
wow.
doing trampoline. Which, funny story on that. And you're welcome, everyone listening, because you're going to get randomness out of me. And that's
Hey, this is what we're here for. We love it.
So I competed all day, and it was like July. And after the whole competition, it was like 100 degrees out. I didn't drink any water that day because I was going crazy. I decided after the competition when no one was watching, I'm like, let me go try a trick that I've never done before.
Nice.
Always a great decision.
Right. At the end of the day.
So I
and
go, it's
everything.
called a Rudy. It's a front flip with 1.5 twists.
Okay.
So I was twisting, and apparently I blacked out in the middle of the flip.
Oh my gosh.
Because I woke up and I had my right leg was wrapped around my head, and I had
my
broken my femur.
Wow.
This was 6th grade going into 7th grade, and that was supposed to be my first year going to nationals.
Right.
And we were going to Disneyland because that's where nationals was.
Gotcha.
And the best part of the story is I'm in the hospital. My brother walks in and he looks right at me and goes, I guess we're not going to Disneyland now, are we?
Like the one time these national tours and everything go somewhere he wants to go.
Right. And I was like, okay, thanks. I'm mobilized in the bed without being able to walk, but you're welcome.
Yeah, for sure. Gotcha. Well, cool. I mean, that's so... I've never met someone that's actually done gymnastics, so that's really cool. Yeah. So kind of transitioning into... When did you discover theater, I guess, is a better question to start this with. Actually,
not till my senior year of high school.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
When I got to high school, I was doing 3 different sports. So I was running cross country. I was diving because I transferred from gymnastics into springboard diving.
Gotcha.
And I was doing track. I was doing those 3 sports, and so that's what my focus was.
Right.
I actually didn't do choir until my sophomore year of high school. And in Wyoming, we started high school at freshman,
Gotcha.
which is different than it is
Sure.
here. And it wasn't until my senior year that I developed a stress fracture in cross country because I was training every day. I was like ranked 9th in the state that year. And so I was like putting all this pressure on myself to run 12 miles a day in the summer. And I was running on pavement, and that slow. I thought it was a bad shin splint, but I'm the type of personality. I'm like, just push through, it'll be fine.
Me too, for sure.
And that developed, and it was in a weird spot too. It was like on the side of my shin, not in the usual place that you would feel a shin splint. And so that's why I thought it was weird. And so we went and got looked at, and it was a stress fracture.
Wow.
The next day, I saw that there were auditions for the school play.
Okay.
Like, we didn't even do musicals. We did play.
Gotcha.
And it was called And They Dance Real Slow in Jackson, which we can get into what that was about later.
Okay,
It was a weird script. But
sure.
So I see that, and I'm like, a play? That might be fun. So I audition, and being Wyoming and a boy, I got like 5 different parts.
Sure.
Sure, gotcha. Someone to play them all.
Uh-huh.
And I remember specifically there was a rehearsal that was canceled, and I emailed the teacher and I said, why are you canceling rehearsal? I've been looking forward to this all day.
Wow.
And then I thought to myself, if I miss a diving practice, I'm excited to have a night off. But now I'm mad that they're canceling a rehearsal.
Right.
And I thought, wait, that's probably how you should feel when
Probably
you
a
really
sign.
love something. Yeah. And so at that point, so I did that. Went from there, and I did speech and debate, which I loved.
Okay.
I did interp. We did a duo which is 2 people. Did you ever do interp?
I didn't.
Oh my God. I actually liked interp more than I liked acting.
Okay.
And then I got into musical theater and blah, blah, blah. It was great. But I did a duo called Hamlet 2, Better Than the Original. And in duo, you can't ever look at the other actor because they want you looking full forward so the judges can see you. You mime your props. You play all of the characters. So you have to change your mannerisms, your accent, your facial expressions for all the different characters. But you don't move around. You have to stay in one spot.
Wow.
So you like quickly just shift into different characters. It blew my mind. It was brilliant. And we did Hamlet 2, and I remember I played the ghost of Hamlet's dad, like as a smoker, and my friend played Hamlet as like this surfer dude, and it was just like the funniest thing in the world.
That's so cool.
So I did that, and it was in that transition because in the middle of my senior year, I was on a diving scholarship and a chemistry major going to University of South Dakota.
Wow.
And then I realized at the middle of that, when I was doing all that, I'm like, when I'm diving, there were literally times where I would be hiding in the bathroom because I didn't want to do a dive because it scared me.
Wow.
And on the flip side, I'm emailing because of canceled rehearsal. I'm like, I need to reevaluate what's important to me because that should indicate. My mom was furious when I switched because she'd spent all this money on me going to diving camps and going to all these things. And she didn't understand it until she saw me really thriving in that realm.
Sure.
But those are my 2 experiences of acting, and it wasn't until my senior year. But that completely changed the trajectory.
Yeah,
of
course
my
of your life and
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
Sure. Cool. Well, I was asking because an undervalued part of performing in general is movement. I feel like, at least for me, because I'm not a mover. So did you feel like all of these activities and everything else that you did kind of fed into the acting part of it and dancing and everything like that? Was it beneficial for you to have done all these, or?
I don't think that I have thought about this until you said that very thing, because my first unit when I teach theater is movement. And I teach everything huge.
Sure.
Like, I call it theater movement. That's 10 times bigger than normal movement. And we do all these activities to enhance their movement and stuff. And I never realized that connection until you just said it, that is probably from the sports background. That
Right.
I had. But my students love it, because my 7th grade boys who want to be moving all the time, I think that's what attracts boys into my program, is because they realize they get to get their
Right.
squirms out in a class.
Gotcha.
But I had never connected that.
Yeah.
You just said that. So that's,
Gotcha.
I'm sure, is
Cool.
why that happened.
Well, that's awesome. And, like I say, we are a theater podcast, so I want to focus on that part of it for sure. So you do these things in high school. You're gearing up, like you were saying, you're going to school out on chemistry program and everything like that. But looking over what you've done, you graduated from Weber State with a music education degree.
Yeah,
is that
choral
correct?
music education.
Gotcha. Okay. So was there a moment where you made that, connection? Like, this is where I want to go. I don't want to do chemistry anymore.
Oh, completely.
'Kay.
Like, I went to 2 years of community college at CWC in Wyoming before
Okay.
I went to Weber State.
Gotcha.
And I wasn't an official music major, but I was on a full ride music scholarship, which is another reason that made me not go to South Dakota. But I took a general ed chemistry class, and within the first 10 minutes, I was like, and I'm not a chemistry major.
Gotcha.
Like, I just realized I liked my high school teacher a lot. And I enjoyed chemistry, but it was just the aspects that he had taught. And then going on beyond that, I'm like, and I don't want that to be a career. But then I got into shows there at CWC.
Okay.
And doing the choir there, it made me realize that I don't know if I had officially gone into that was going to be my educational path until I went to Weber. And then I decided when I got there that I was going to do music education. And I remember going to my first class, which was a music theory class. And I went, wait, I get to be in a class where we talk about music the whole time. And then after that, I get to go to another class where I get to talk about music the whole time. And then that just kept amplifying into, yep, this is what I want to do.
Gotcha. Cool. So what was the decision between choir and theater? Because you were doing kind of both, you were saying, at the same time, right?
The decision there was more, choir at that time was more of a, I think one, I knew that could be more of a career,
Sustainable thing.
right?
Sure.
And two, that at that time was probably a little bit higher on the list of important things to me.
Okay.
I did, when I was at Weber, I think the first 2 years of college, I was literally always in a show at
Gotcha.
Terrace Plaza Playhouse.
Oh, okay, cool.
And so, like, I literally was back to back to back to back shows for 2 years in a row. Looking back, I'm not sure how I managed that and got good grades, but somehow it happened.
Sure.
But we all know in theater that you do that. Part of the reason you do it is for your psyche, and that fixing of the psyche, being in a show, helps you focus to get homework done.
Definitely.
And it also has to do with that organizational thing, because if I wasn't in a show, I'd have 5 hours when I got home to do homework and then not do it. But if I am in a show, I have that 45-minute time slot where I've got to finish it.
That makes way too much sense.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah. And only people that do lots of shows understand it.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something, like, if I'm not in a show, then I get so anxious that I just, like, I don't know what to do. I kind of just sit around and do nothing and just stress. But as soon as I'm either working on a show or like in tech or whatever, I'm like, I want to go out and do stuff. And I want to, it makes total sense for sure. So at Weber, were you involved with actual choirs, or was it more just learning about teaching and the music theory and everything like that?
Both.
Okay.
They had 2 choirs at Weber. There was the concert choir, which anyone could be in, essentially.
Gotcha.
They didn't let everybody in, but essentially everyone could be in.
Right.
And then they had the chamber choir, which you auditioned for, which I was part of as well.
Gotcha.
So we did those, and then there was the music theory classes, the pedagogy classes, the education classes, and all those kind of things.
Gotcha. Cool.
Somehow it lined up for me that I was in the perfect alignment to graduate in 4 years, because that's pretty rare because some classes are only offered every other year.
Gotcha.
And you have to enter into the magical alignment time to make that they all work out, and that rarely happens. Somehow I did it, and I didn't even plan it. I just signed up for the next year of classes, and then looked at the thing, and they're like, "Oh, that's perfect. You this. I'm like, okay, thanks.
Yeah. Wow. I would be frustrated if I had to wait another year just to get a class.
So many people were. And so many people left the program because of that kind of stuff, because they just weren't working the schedules. And I was just like, oh, I'm sorry, that's working for me.
Sorry. Yeah, for sure. Cool. So in these performances specifically, do you remember anything about those? Did you get to travel or do anything like that? Or
the choirs, we went to Disneyland.
Okay.
Almost every year.
That's awesome.
Which is really fun. And ours wasn't really like one of them. I think we actually like performed as a choir. The rest of them were just like, let's go to Disneyland.
Oh, okay, cool.
Disneyland.
That's awesome.
Which both were exciting.
Yeah.
It also made me realize that I am okay teaching junior high because I don't ever want to plan a Disneyland trip with students.
Gotcha.
So that made me, I loved it as a student, but seeing the detailed work it put into it, I'm like, I'm good not to ever plan that.
For sure. Gotcha. Well, cool. And when you were performing with these choirs, I am assuming it got a little like more serious. You wanted to learn how to actually be a part of a choir rather than, do it recreationally in high school.
Right.
What did you learn, and how does that kind of inform how you music direct now?
I mean, I thought a lot about it, but looking back at me as a student, there's so many things that I did that I would never do now.
Okay.
The biggest thing, though, I think is being personable and being relatable and approachable and those kinds of things. I remember when I would work with, we had to right before we went into student teaching, we had to teach a couple songs to the actual choir.
Okay.
And I remember just hearing feedback of, I like working with you because it just seemed very natural and very easy to communicate those kind of things. And so I remember with that, I know for a fact, and this has kind of stayed with me, and it's something that I don't necessarily need to work on, but I know that this have always been part of me, is driving home the importance of parts and harmony.
Okay.
And I learned from that that used to be my only focus, and I would not work anything else because I was just like, altos, you're doing it wrong. Like the whole time, and my teacher would be like, yes, but are they articulating? Is there dynamics? Is there blah, blah, blah? I'm like,
right.
Oh, I don't care. Altos are singing their part wrong. And so that would be like, I don't know why that's drilled in my brain. I know that it helps to create good balance and blend within a choir.
Sure.
But since then, I've learned the importance of finding the balance of being able to incorporate all of those things, not just people singing their part.
Sure. Gotcha. Cool. Well, and this all kind of is convalescing into what I'm most excited to talk to you about.
Excellent.
But you said that you started student teaching, and ultimately you graduated and got a job in what you're studying and everything like that. So how was student teaching? What was how did it feel coming into class, like the first day, everything like that?
Mostly good.
Good. Well, that's good.
I remember I got to pick where I student taught, which is pretty rare because some they just put you anywhere.
Sure.
But I remember the junior high that I student taught at. First of all, I didn't want to teach junior high. I thought I wanted to teach high school because you can do harder repertoire and stuff like that.
Right.
But this junior high came in and was saying really difficult stuff. It was Kaysville Junior High.
Okay.
And I was like, man, if I can teach that age how to sing like that, then it's just going to enhance my high school teaching.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I talked with the teacher. I talked to the student teacher coordinator. I'm like, I want to teach this at Kaysville. It just worked out that I went there.
Awesome.
Fell in love with that age group and then just stayed in junior high.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember I went into it and I started teaching, but I didn't think anything of the educational parts of things that I had to like classroom management or any of that. I'm like, I just need to teach music. And so I went and started teaching music and the kids went crazy.
Right.
And it was a struggle for me as far as there's a lot of psychological things that happened to me at that point because I started doubting myself as a human being and as a teacher because I was quote unquote struggling with managing the class without seeing it through the filter of I'm new to this and everyone struggles at things when they're new because that's not my personality. My personality is I will be perfect the first time I do it.
I am absolutely there with you.
And so I created these like belief systems that in order to be a good teacher, your students must be quietly watching you the entire class. And so I started like beating myself up over these weird little things that really I didn't start to get out of until the last couple of years. Looking back, those things have really helped drive to who the teacher that I am today.
Okay.
And I'm thankful for them. But for the most part, I loved my student teaching. I had great kids, really talented kids. But there was this psychological thing that I had to get through with realizing of certain things. Of it's not just about teaching the music. There also is all these other things that you can't really prepare yourself for until you do them and fail at them and then fix them.
Gotcha. So yeah, you're touching on something that I have had a hard time putting into words, but you're saying that you demand perfection from yourself in everything that you do immediately. How do you deal with that? Like, because that's something that, like I said, I definitely struggle with. Like, even starting this podcast, the first episode, I look back and I was like, maybe I shouldn't do this. Maybe I don't know how to do it. And it's like, no, you gotta keep going. Talk about that if you could.
I mean, and I could go on for hours, so this could be a whole nother podcast topic.
Let's do it.
Especially like it boils down to this. 2 years ago, I almost quit teaching.
Wow.
Because I realized that I was taking things personally. I was letting all of these things emotionally affecting me.
Mm-hmm.
And it was getting to the point where I was getting sick. It was affecting everything. I wasn't happy and all these kind of stuff. And it boiled down to the only thing that I can change is how I react to other people.
Right.
No one else is going to change. And that leads me to a bunch of things that I've studied about emotions and a bunch of things I've studied about the psyche and things like that. That will be the other topic of things.
Okay,
but
we'll do it for sure.
In what I found within that is the acceptance of who you are and being authentic with that is what's important. And I teach this to my students too, as if you don't get to the perfect unless you get through the failure.
Gotcha.
Because the failure is what teaches you what to do different the next time.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't label the failure as a bad thing.
Right.
The failure, in quotes, is what got you to the next step. So like when I teach script writing, I say just start writing. There's going to be 75% of crap on your paper, but that 25% is going to make your mind go into something else that gets you to your script.
Sure.
But you couldn't have got to that 25 unless that 75 crap came out first, because you have to get that blockage out of your brain to get to the good first. And so I've had to do that in my life too. And I say, that was weird. And I stop myself and go, no, that happened for a reason. It didn't go the way you thought, but that's fine because that's going to get me to where I want to go later on.
Gotcha.
The only way that we learn to get to that end goal is to get through the crap. So I started to embrace the crap, to embrace those imperfections and those failures, in quotes. And if you don't label them as failures and you just label them as, this is getting me to where I want to be eventually, but I can't get to where I want to be unless I get through this crap. Me expecting me to get there without these quote unquote failures is impossible, because the only way to get there is learning through the failures to get to that good.
Gotcha.
And so as soon as I was able to do that, not only do I find acceptance in those moments where I make mistakes and those moments where I do the things wrong, and that's so much better for my psyche to accept those things, and then I'm not putting myself down for them. I'm also getting to better, perfect moments because I was able to embrace the imperfections first.
Sure. Gotcha. I'm sorry. This is a good tangent for me. I want to, dive into this. A weird flip side to what you're talking about with your students. Do you see them kind of struggling with these? And then how do you kind of go about trying to fix that or help them out at all? Do you see that?
Oh, all the time.
Okay.
Like for instance, this always comes up to me when we talk about, because I try to be very transparent when it comes to emotions and how people should behave. And we have good conversations, because my students always, at our final concert every year, it always gets really emotional because students are sad to leave, and students really have created these friendships with other students. They don't want to leave them, and blah, blah, blah. And we always have a conversation after the concert, and they're like, I cried the whole concert. And someone's like, I have a black soul. I didn't cry at all. And I stop them and go, why is not crying at all a bad thing? Why do you have to show sadness in the same way that other people show sadness? And then it brings up a good conversation of, we as a society tend to label this emotion looks like this. If you don't show it this way, you are wrong.
Right.
And then we go, no, everyone's going to experience things in the way that they want to experience it themselves. And so you have to be accepting of the way that you want to experience your life. And then everyone else should, but it's their choice if they don't accept the way how you live your life too. And I feel like at this moment of their life where they're trying to figure out what kind of human being they're going to be, if we can have these conversations going into when they develop into that human being, then hopefully that they'll be able to navigate their life in such a way that's not beating themselves up for not being the typical type of thing that they want to be.
Definitely. Well, and that's something that's like kind of in the zeitgeist or whatever culturally here. It's like the gender stereotypes
Right.
or expectations and everything like that. Is that something that you've gotten pushback from even like parents of kids or kids themselves or anything like that?
As far as gender stereotypes or
Just
in general?
what you're talking about, just like,
No, I mean, I try to keep it pretty general
Okay.
because
I'm sure
I mean,
that,
the second you say this is how it's going to be, that's when I could see there'd be issues.
Right.
But all we really talk about is being accepting of. I don't ever get into specifics of being accepting of specific type things, but embracing who you are. I spend the first 2 weeks of my classes just community building, just letting people be comfortable with the fact that there are brilliant, different personalities in this class. And the second you judge that, they're not going to be creative anymore.
right.
You
Gotcha.
have to let them be their own individual type of creativity. You may not understand it, but that's not your choice to make because that you're not that person. I haven't gotten any feedback because I keep it on that pretty general plane.
Okay.
But it can filter in any way that they want their brain to filter it into.
Sure.
But we go and I'm pretty meticulous with it, and I say, when performance, this is what it looks like to show respect. Whispering during a performance makes us think that you're making fun of us, and that stops the creative process.
Gotcha.
So we keep it within that kind of ness, and I get nothing but positivity and thankfulness from parents.
Awesome.
For it. So
Cool. Well, and we're going to circle back around to that in a little bit, but let me just get back into where we were going. So you said that you fell in love with junior high kids specifically when you started student teaching. Why them specifically? Because I've talked to you about this before. If I were to be a teacher, I would want to do that high school level.
Right.
Why junior high?
Junior high, I have a pretty high standard when it comes to choir and to theater. But they rise to it because there's this excitement at that age when they get there that gets them so excited. They know, we're not, people this age aren't normally able to do this, but we can.
Gotcha.
And that drives them to get them even more excited to get it the next time. They also think I'm funny still, which
Cool.
Part of that because high school would just roll their eyes at some of the jokes.
Sure.
that I give.
Gotcha.
So they still think I'm funny. There's an energy in that age group and part of it is in the wanting to please category of things, but there's also just an energy of excitement. And to me, like, the ego starts to develop at that age of I'm too cool for this. And if I can get them to stay out of that, I tell them, I'm like, go let that person take a nap for a second because we're going to be quote unquote stupid for a second. We're going to be T-Rexes and you're just going to roam around the class as a T-Rex because I just need you to get out of the mindset that being a T-Rex is dumb.
Right. Sure.
And they're still in that mindset where they can be goofy because I feel like the second you can be the stupidest character in the world on stage, then you can do anything. Mm-hmm. And they're still open to that at that age.
Sure. Well, and that's funny because I've helped you out with casting a couple of your shows and everything. And your kids don't look like what I remember junior high kids being. And it's just a testament to who you are and what you can bring out of these kids. And I love that. Love it. So cool. You do your student teaching and everything like that. And then what was your first job after college and everything?
So right after student teaching, I got hired as a part-time choir teacher at Midvale Park Junior High. Okay. And it was like in January. So I was starting in the middle of the school year. Right. The teacher had a baby right before. So I was taking over for her. And then at the end of that contract, they were going to reevaluate. So I was part-time choir in the middle of the school year after all the procedures and things have been taught. It was horrible.
Why is that?
I did the same thing. I went in, didn't have any expectations for the students. I just I'm going to start teaching music. Day one, I put music in front of them and started playing parts. Students didn't know how the class functionality worked, what the behavior expectations were, any of that. And they walked all over me. And it was frustrating. I remember one time, I think I sent 75% of the class to the principal's office.
Wow.
Because I was done with them, it was frustrating. And then I remember at the end of that year, there was an involuntary transfer, which means that another teacher was sent from a junior high to take my position. And then right as she did that, she said her position was open where she was transferring from, which I didn't understand at the time. Then why are you not just staying there? But whatever, I'm not going to question it. And so I went and interviewed there, and that's where I ended up getting the job where I'm currently at.
Cool.
At Central Davis Junior High.
Gotcha. Awesome. So Yeah, let's just jump in there then. I've already kind of talked to you about how you attack, quote unquote, attack a group of children and everything like that. How Jason attacks a group of children.
Context. That's
right.
Great, yeah.
But when you got there, you were telling me that you were hired on as the choir teacher, but during the interview, they had also asked you to take over the theater department. Right? Cool. So, was that something you wanted to do, or was that just, I guess I'll come on and do this, or?
It wasn't something I wanted to do until they said it. And then the second they said theater, I'm like, everything opened. I'm like, I've never known I wanted this until you just said it.
Awesome.
So yeah, I was going to be just part-time choir, and then they asked me to, and it wasn't even take over the theater program. It was to start.
Oh, wow.
A theater
So
program.
they hadn't had anything before that.
Well, like 20 years before that.
Wow.
And then they didn't have theater. And then apparently the year before they'd done a musical, and it got students really excited about it. And so they, I don't know why they just started to start a theater program without knowing that they were going to have a teacher to teach it. But I guess they're just going to open it and see if a teacher would apply.
Gotcha.
And I think when they asked me to do it because I did choir, they're like, that's performance. Maybe he can also do theater. And it ended up working perfectly because I did that. Then I had to do the whole endorsement process to become highly qualified in that, which was a pain in the butt. But I ended up doing that, taking a bunch of courses. At this point, if you'd asked me if I had to choose between, I always label it as it'd be like Sophie's choice, because I don't want to choose between either one. And I'm glad that I don't have to. And that's another reason why it's great to stay in junior high, because I can
do both.
There are no high school programs that can do both.
Right. Definitely.
So I'm happy to stay there.
For sure. And I would imagine, too, that you're getting the choir kids more interested in theater and vice versa,
Oh,
too.
my gosh,
So,
yeah. I have better singers in the musical because I'm training for that.
Exactly.
I have singers in choir who actually are performing at the concert, because I cannot tell you how many choir concerts I've gone to where they all stand there looking bored to death. And I'm like,
Sure.
why are we watching you if you're not doing anything performative to make us interested in your actual performance?
Interesting, because that's not something that I would even think
Yeah.
is part of choir, for sure.
Right. Oh, we do
Yeah.
facial expression lessons that are just
Wow.
hysterical, because I
That's
call out
awesome.
different emotions and they have to change their face based on the emotion that I call out. And they're singing this beautiful song about Jesus, and I'm like, anger, and they're like, ah!
Dude, I want to come take your classes. Can I
Do it.
audit
Just
your
sit in the back.
classes
Just
or
sit in the
something?
back. We'll have a good time.
But anyway, that's awesome. So you're hired on to do choir and theater and everything like that. How did you attack going and building a theater program out of nothing?
I actually contacted Phaedra.
Oh, okay. My high school teacher.
Yes. Because she had started a company called UACT, Utah. I'm on the board, and now I can't. Association UACT of Theater Teachers. I'm sorry if there are any UACT members that are listening right now.
We might need a change of a board member.
I know, right? I'm the junior high mentor, and I don't know what that stands for. I'm sorry.
No.
But I will embrace my imperfection. But anyway, I contacted her, and then she had this whole starting up packet that was brilliant. And then she referred me to Liz Smith, who was teaching junior high at the time. And I just sat down with her and I picked her brain.
Gotcha.
And she gave me a lot of things that have developed my program into what it is, because she's all about playing games and things like that. And so I started, and it definitely, looking back at what I did, I'm like, we literally played red light, green light for a month my first year teaching.
I love it.
Different. Today we're going to be this, and we're going to play red light, green light again. And my kids were like, are you serious? And I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing yet.
Right.
But we had a good rapport, and we had fun, and it helped me develop into what the program is now. But I kind of and also my principal didn't want to do the musical after school. So he said, will you do the musical in your Theater 1 classes as part of a one unit would be the musical.
Right.
And I had 3 sessions of Theater 1, so 3 different classes.
Wow.
So I'm like, you want me to do a musical with 3 different classes that never rehearsed together?
Yeah. That doesn't seem like it would work at all.
And so me, obviously being a new teacher, I'm like, I'll do whatever you say.
Yeah.
And so I went to cast the show, and I realized I'm going to have leads
in different classes.
Yeah. How am I going to run scenes if they're in different classes? So then I had to do a couple after school rehearsals for them to work, but I didn't have an actual after school rehearsal until 3 days before we opened the show.
Wow.
So 3 rehearsals, that was it for all 3 classes to come together and do a full musical. So needless to say, I never did that again.
Yeah, don't blame
We
you
went
for
to
sure.
after school rehearsals for the musical after that.
Yeah. So do you know why he didn't want to do it after school?
I think there was just some parent complaint about time and students not being able to do other things because of the time of the rehearsals were.
Gotcha.
which is why I kind of went into like now at my school, we double cast the show completely. So I have 2 complete different casts. So one cast only rehearses Monday, Wednesday. The other cast only rehearses Tuesday, Thursday, because I'm trying to adhere to accommodate students to do multiple things. Because like we said before, I did so many things in my school that I want students at 12 to 14 years old, you haven't found your niche. You don't know what you want. Like, I don't want them to say you can only do musical theater and not find the other thing that may be your life path.
Right.
So I want them to be able to have those opportunities still. And that seems to help with that, to be able to do both those things, to adhere to the fact that they not have so many rehearsals after school, but still have enough time to get the show ready and do a good show.
Gotcha. Makes sense for sure. What was the first musical you did, by the way? Susical. Gotcha.
And I love the show. I want to do it again because I need to do the show justice, because I've watched videos again of that and I'm like, oh, no.
You poor kids. Yeah. Gotcha. Okay. Well, what about that first performance then makes you want to go back and do it? That's a weird question. Just asking what was shit about your show.
the technical aspects.
Okay.
I mean, because we were having this conversation before we started, just of like, I didn't know a whole lot about technical theater when I started because I have a choir degree.
Right.
And it was literally just, I made 2 panels and painted the back wall, my set. And so first of all, I'd want to design the set again for that, because I have so much more confidence in my ability to design a set. And I have a brilliant parent who builds my sets now, and I just want to see what he would do with it.
Right.
My light design, because we were in this cafetorium that literally had on or off lights, was on or off.
Right.
So it'd be cool to see what we could do lighting wise with that. And then also, as much as I loved having the beginning level of theater class in a musical where half of them took theater just because they had no other elective to take, it'd be cool to see an ensemble of people who auditioned and wanted to be there and put the effort to making a full musical out.
Gotcha. Cool. Well, and how long have you been at this school now?
I just started my 8th year.
8th year. Wow. Okay, cool. So how have you, like looking back on that, how have you grown and how have you made the program what it is today?
Well, I went from having 1 level of theater to now we have 3 levels of theater.
Okay.
I obviously am more structured in the way that I do things, because that was just, let's play another game today. What is it going to be? My goal is, from the performing aspect, is creating actors who feel comfortable on stage.
Okay.
And so everything I do is through the lens of, are we feeling comfortable on stage? Are we feeling comfortable creating characters? Are we feeling comfortable, blah, 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 blah. And so it's developed into, I mean, the coolest thing for me is that there are students day one who are like, my parents made me take this class. And then the end of the year, they're the ones that are begging to be in a scene and do another, to volunteer for everything possible. And
you're talking about
who
idea. I was, for sure.
Yeah. And that I think is the most important thing to me, that people who are scared to death to raise their hand to ask a question are now begging to be in improv scenes, or begging to be in multiple scenes with other people and say, so-and-so's not here, who wants to play this part? And then 90% of the hands go up in the air just to say like 2 words in a scene.
Right.
And that 2-word part means the world to them. And it's not I try really hard to say, do we do theater for parts, or do we do theater for the experience? And we talk about this before every show, and I remind them, and they all yell out, for the experience. And so I'm like, hey, we're allowed to be human beings and upset when we don't get parts, because that means we care.
Right.
But we need to remember, after we're done being upset about not getting the part we want, we're doing this for the experience.
Absolutely.
And ensemble member number 24 is just as important as the lead. And I spend a lot of time making sure that the leads are never putting themselves above the ensemble, and the ensemble's never putting themselves below the leads. And we do things... I do over-the-top rehearsals where I say, who can be too much? I dare you to make me pull you back.
Right.
And I love seeing them get so excited. I had one girl, we were doing Little Mermaid, and she was one of the princesses, because in the stage version, the princesses come to sing to who has the Ariel voice. Mm-hmm. She was the only princess who didn't have a line. She was just one of the princesses, and we made her the frumpy princess.
Okay.
That just wandered in and didn't really know what was going on.
Right.
And so we did you go too far rehearsal, and she was literally rubbing her butt on the floor like a dog, going up and sniffing armpits of other princesses, and I stopped the rehearsal and I said, "It has happened."
Yeah.
And she has now been the standard to which going too
love
far
it.
in rehearsals is. And so now every once in a while, and they've become frumpy princess rehearsals where I said, "Find your frumpy princess who can be the frumpy princess at the rehearsal today."
Right.
So that they're important and go, okay, if I'm ensemble, I can still find those moments where I can be going that far and creating this character and creating this backstory and creating all this stuff where I'm just as important to watch as the lead who comes on stage.
Sure.
It's the same thing when I music direct. I tend to teach more to the ensemble than the leads because there's this stigma of ensemble is boring and I don't want to be the ensemble. And I'm like, well, then change your mindset of what ensemble is.
Right.
Because you get to create what you want your character to be. There is nothing defining who it is.
That's interesting. Yeah.
And you can be whatever you want. And I love watching ensembles where one person on one side of the stage is like giving angry eyes to someone on the other side of the stage. I'm like, tell me your story.
Right.
Tell me what you're thinking. And I want to know about that. And so I train my ensemble to be those kind of ensemble members. Sometimes they go too far and people are like, I was watching the ensemble more than the leads and it was really distracting. I'm like, I don't care because they're important too and they deserve to have a storyline.
Right. Well, at that age too, like
Right.
it's really hard to break kids out of their shell at all anyway.
Right.
So to have that, yeah, it makes sense for sure. But this is kind of goes into my next question. What kind of responsibility do you feel to these children? Like, do you want to prepare them for high school? Do you want to what would you want these kids to come out of your program with, I guess?
I want them to be good human beings.
Okay.
Because I'm fully aware that maybe 5% will go on to theater after high school.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe 50% will go into high school theater, but high school theater you have to pigeonhole into because you have so many opportunities that kind of want you just to be on one. And so I go into it with the awareness like I'm not training actors. I want them to be good actors and we want good shows, but I want them to be good human beings. I want them to be accepting of everyone that comes into their life, whether that's in a show or whether they're in a class where they have a team, like a group assignment, and they realize that there's going to be personality clashes and they've learned how to deal with those personalities and they can still get the assignment done.
Right. Gotcha.
I want them to go into a job interview with confidence and knowing that they can be their true authentic self. And that's what matters in an interview. Mm-hmm. And then if they don't get the job, they don't beat themselves up for not being a quality human being.
Right.
Because same thing with casting, we talk about it has nothing to do with your talent. Because if it did, I mean, you've seen some of the time with those kids. I'm like, if I did it on talent, I'd have 17 casts and they'd be brilliant.
For sure.
But it has things to do with small things. And if you can learn that the fact that it has nothing to do with me, it had to do with that situation. Now I'm going to take this situation that may not have been what I thought it was going to be and make the best of it. How many things can you apply that to? That's what I want from my students.
Gotcha.
Theater and acting wise, secondary. Let's create good human beings.
Yeah.
That's
I love that. I love that. Okay. And I have one more question before we go to our break, and I hope you're okay with me sharing this. It was on your social media, so I hope it's all right. But you posted a letter that you got from one of your children just a couple days ago, and I wanted to just read kind of an excerpt from it if I could.
Oh, yeah.
So it was a kid that I've seen apparently because she was in Shrek, but that's besides the point. You taught her from, it looks like, 6th grade all the way through 7th grade through 9th grade. Okay. And she's done, it looks like, a bunch of your musicals, taken a bunch of your classes and everything like that. But like I say, let me just read part of this. She said, I graduated in June and am now living in California because I'm working at Disneyland as a character performer. At my audition in July, I hear your words in my mind the whole time and remembered what I had been taught by Mr. Campbell. One thing in particular that really was the biggest influence was that you had taught that if you feel dumb, you're doing it right. At the audition, I made sure that I felt dumb the entire time. I made colorful choices as you taught. I remember how in improv you never say no because that kills the scene. And most importantly, I remembered your words of encouragement throughout my junior high years and remembered you saying, I knew you could do that. Because of that, I knew I could do it too. The audition went great, and because of that, I'm now fulfilling my dream as a character actor here at Disneyland. I just wanted to let you know that the impact you made on my life and the lessons that you taught stuck with me, and I'll remember them forever. You're hands down one of the greatest teachers I've ever had. I just had to let you know that what an awesome teacher you were/are. Thank you for helping me, not just in the classroom, but in real life as well. I wouldn't be here if it weren't for what I learned from Mr. Campbell. So my question is, what is the thing that you're most proud of in your career?
That.
Okay.
And that not just that
Not that
experience,
right.
but like, I mean, yes, she happened to go into more of a performative thing.
Right.
But her story is one of scared. She's one of those, I was scared to raise my hand in classes. I was scared to put myself out there and try different things. I was scared to do whatever, those kind of things that limit us because we're worried of what other people think of all these kind of things. And I hear from students all the time, they're like, I learned not to care what other people think of me because that doesn't matter.
Right.
What I think about myself is what's important because that's all that you can control. And because she was able to do that and transfer it into something that she loves, that's what's important to me.
Sure.
Finding ways to students who can't find the courage to raise their hand in class that now can simply answer a question somewhere else. Students that have the courage to go apply for that job they really want, even though they're really nervous because they know that, because I always do this too. I'm like, nerves are not a thing. We've labeled it's adrenaline.
Right.
Some jerk a while ago started labeling that as nerves.
Gotcha.
And then we associate that adrenaline as something that's bad. So whenever a student says, I'm really nervous, I stop them and go, you're what? And they go, I'm really excited. I'm like, that's right.
I love it.
So that they know that that doesn't have to stop them. If they can label that adrenaline as something that's there to help them, then they can apply that to those kind of things. So that's what makes me proud. That's why I do it. Yes, I get excited when we do great shows. Yes, we get excited when we do theatrical things. But to hear students that are able to do things that they weren't able to do before because they learned something about being their true authentic self and being confident, that's what I want.
Awesome. Well, I love it. And I love that post. And I hope you're okay with me sharing
totally.
it. Perfect.
Totally.
Cool. Well, yeah, like I say, why don't we take a break? I got to go to the bathroom. So we'll come back and we'll kind of talk about Midvale specifically and kind of music direction in general. Cool. Like what you're hearing? Please remember to leave us a 5-star review on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, or wherever else you're listening. Also remember to find us on Facebook, Instagram, Patreon, and now on YouTube at MMST Podcast. Thank you so much, guys. All right, and we are back. I had my potty break, so we're all good. But yeah, cool. Well, like I say, let's just jump into your Midvale career, and kind of we'll go through that. Your first show here was Legally Blonde, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Actually, I don't know if you know this, but I auditioned for Rent.
You did?
And I was cast as, what's his name? Ty Diggs plays him in the...
Benny.
I was Benny.
Really? What happened?
I turned it down.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Because, I mean, at that time, I don't know what's going on. I really wanted a specific role, and I didn't put it specifically on the audition form. And then I thought about it, and I'm like, it's a fine part, but I was really busy. And so I played the diva, and I said, well, I would only accept this, and then I ended up not taking it.
Gotcha.
Looking back, I kind of wish I would have taken it, but anyway, so that was my actual first experience.
Gotcha. Okay.
Well,
it's funny because we had a hard time filling Benny, so that's really that's funny. But okay, well, then let's start there. How did you hear about Midvale, I guess?
I actually came to see the first time they did Next to Normal.
Okay.
Because I knew Aaron Ford and I just had discovered the show and like fell in love with it.
Sure.
And so then I'm like, someone's doing Next to Normal in Utah.
Yeah.
And so then that's how I heard about, I think Aaron had posted it on Facebook or something to advertise it. And so I'm like, oh, I love that show and I love Aaron. Let's go watch it. Cool. And so I went and saw it. And I think on the back of that program is when I saw auditions for Rent.
Gotcha.
And so that's what made me want to. And I love Rent. So I was like, oh, I'll audition for Rent.
Sure. Gotcha. Cool. Was there anything that you remember about that audition or anything like that?
No.
Okay.
That's really going to help push the story excitement forward. But it's pretty typical. I mean, I went in and sang my first audition, which was fine. And then I got called back and came. And I think I was called back for Benny and then I was called back for someone else. And then I remember singing the part and then leaving.
Gotcha.
So
cool.
I think it was a pretty straightforward callback. I don't remember being one of those 8-hour wait around callbacks that we all love so much.
Right. Oh my gosh. No, that's something that Tammy's been pretty good at as far as what I've done. Just keep those to a minimum.
Right.
Speaking of, do you know why people would have to have 8-hour callbacks or anything?
I don't know because it frustrates me too because I try not to waste people's time, and I know everyone that says that sometimes at one point in your life will waste people's time because sometimes in performing arts you can't get around it. I think there's a mindset of I could want to see an actor again, and if I let them go, I won't get that opportunity.
Right.
And then usually when you have that mindset, you just end up not
Letting
having that
anyone go.
actor do anything.
Oh,
and so
gotcha.
they just sit around. I think that's why. But since I when I do callbacks, I like meticulously say this for this 20 minutes, we're going to do these characters, then they're good to go. And then I have to stress about it, but at least I'm not stressing other people out.
Gotcha.
But I think that's why
Sure.
some people do that. But that gives them the freedom to not have to worry about a schedule so that they can call individuals in to read for whoever they want
Sure.
at any time that they need.
Gotcha. Makes sense. Okay. Well, after Rent then, was Midvale still kind of on your radar? Or was this like, how did you hear about Legally Blonde, I guess?
So I was doing Jekyll and Hyde
Okay.
with Black Horse.
Black Horse. Okay.
And we did the show in Park City, and Alex, the director of Legally Blonde, was in
Gotcha.
Jekyll and Hyde with me.
Okay.
And he said he was looking for a music director, and I said that'd be fun. I like that show. I'd love to music direct Legally Blonde.
Awesome.
And so then I came and just met with Tammy. And then she said, okay, then let's do it. And then I was music director for Legally Blonde. So that's kind of how that happened.
Gotcha. Cool. So, okay. So, prepping for that and everything, how did you go about prepping for auditions for Legally Blonde specifically?
I don't do a lot of prep work before auditions. One, because I want to just kind of, there's nothing really you can know until you get the audition itself. And Alex was really adamant about making all the sides for the songs, and he wanted specific songs and specific chunks. So I was like, fine, I'll just show up and
Sure.
I'll just watch people audition.
Gotcha.
So I didn't have to really prep for anything because I just like called auditions were these days, show up then. I'm like, okay, done. So
Gotcha.
I didn't think much about it. I showed up when they asked to audition.
Is that typical of a director to pick their own sides, or is that something that usually falls to the music director?
It depends. Some directors are very specific because they want to see the emotion behind. And Tammy will be either way. Sometimes she's asked me to pick sides, and then sometimes she will pick the sides, and sometimes I'll pick the sides, and then she'll change her mind because she wants something specific. I'm like, then you just pick the sides, which is fine. I don't ever overthink when I pick sides. One, because I have a harder time with it because when I do shows at school, they have sides already selected.
Gotcha.
So it's easy because you just go to MTI's website and say sides for callbacks, and then it just prints it all out and you hand it to students. So I don't have to overthink about those things because someone else has done it for me.
Right.
So when I have to do it, then I overthink, and I ended up just go, what's the highest part of the song?
Gotcha.
Do that.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I would bet that half of these boil down to just if you can hit the note. you
Right.
know, for sure. Gotcha.
We need to know. If
Right.
we can hit a note or
Okay.
not.
Well, then, this is kind of a general question, but you can use Legally Blonde as an example. When auditions do roll around, what do you look for specifically in an actor as far as vocals, acting, whatever else?
For me, when I music direct, vocal health is my number one.
Wow. Okay.
I have to know that they can sing it, but sing it in a way that's not going to hurt their voice. Sing it in a way that's pleasing to the ear, pleasing in a way that I know from pedagogy standpoint that's done in a way that I can either help with or is done in a way that's going to work well and not damage anything.
Gotcha.
So when I'm listening, I'm listening for that first. But since I'm also a teacher of acting, I'm looking for, can they act and sing at the same time?
Okay.
Can they do those kind of things? But vocal health is first
Gotcha.
for me. Vocal health or the what I can hear in initial audition of what could be potential for vocal health.
Gotcha.
I'm listening with it.
Well, because at the community level, I'm sure that you have a lot of untrained voices that come through the door.
Right.
Gotcha. Perfect. Well, then, I'm not sure that that's kind of what you look for in callbacks as well, right?
Oh, completely.
Okay, perfect. So we'll talk about the music direction part of it for a little bit, and then we'll jump into the actual character that you played. But when you're music directing, how do you go about teaching that vocal health? Is that something that you do teach in callback? Okay, perfect.
Well, and at a callback, I always make sure that when they're singing through, I give a little spiel of this needs to be in an easier voice. I don't want to hear any pushing of the sound. I want to hear that you can do it in the healthy way.
Right.
Before that they actually sing the callback. And then when I go into the actual teaching of the music, I make sure that during the rehearsal process, for the female voice, that they're not in a full weighted belty sound during that time. So that it's mainly psychologically because adrenaline was going to push the weighted sound. And then if they push it during that time, muscle memory kicks in, and then they're pushing their voice in rehearsals and definitely into performances. So if they're training an ease of the voice during the rehearsals, they're training their brain to say this is what should be happening when they perform it. And then when the adrenaline kicks the weight in, the ease or the head voice part of it is still present.
Gotcha.
For the boys, kind of the same thing too. We play around with head voice / falsetto depending on the vocal range of the boy.
Gotcha.
But I rarely get into a forte or a loud level within the rehearsal process, so that we're training the ease of the voice throughout that process, so that when the muscle memory kicks in later on, that they still have some vocal health or ease to it when they go into it.
Gotcha. That's interesting to me because it makes sense for choir, but in theater, you're almost trained to push and like make that bright sound. So that's definitely interesting to me. Is that something that you've found, if you can make the choir sound more just loose and everything, do you still get the volume that you need?
Yes.
Okay.
You can train the sound in a healthy voice so that it sounds the same, but it's not hurting the voice.
Gotcha.
Because the adrenaline will get that sound and that rawness that the chest voice will bring to it within it. But if you lose all of the heady quality, then it's gone. So once the weight is added, you'll still get the same volume, still get the same sound, but the head voice or the ease to the voice allows no damage and things like that, so that you can perform longer runs of shows. You can do all those kinds of things without, but it doesn't affect the sound of the volume.
Gotcha. Perfect. Okay, cool. Yeah, this is almost like a music lesson for me because you can tell I'm very untrained for sure. Okay, well then, when you're, again, a general question, when you're working with the ensemble, because you did mention ensembles kind of where you're focused on, what is important to you for musical theater sound specifically?
A light but super bright, dare I say, nasal sound.
Okay.
And I say dare I say because there's like this faux pas in the vocal community, like nasal singing's bad. I'm like, no, because you can just do certain things, lifting your nasal pharynx and things like, and getting into your nasal pharynx, lifting your soft palate, that can release that nasal sound. But we grow up making sound effects our whole life, and a nyeh sound we do all the time.
Right.
And it's a way to get that sound out of the throat and into a place where you're going to be making a louder sound without pushing.
Gotcha.
So I work that way, and then we train and do things to lift that up to make it more of a pleasing sound.
Right.
But I also feel like it's a quick reference of knowing how to make a sound work, because most of us can make a nya, 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 nya sound. We do that our whole life growing up.
Right, sure.
So it's an easy reference for them to pull to get that sound forward.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. And then when you're piecing a cast together, is there anything that you need specifically? Like, do you have to fill out certain amount of basses, tenors, alto, sopranos? I don't know if that's an odd question.
I don't normally focus on that before casting a show, because yes, they put that on their form. I basically just make sure that we have an even number of boys and girls.
Okay.
I do look at that for reference, especially for the boys range, because boys are harder to put in one or the other.
Sure.
Usually tenors have a harder time singing the lower, and basses will whine and complain that they can't sing the higher.
Right.
Which is fine. I'm a bass. I understand.
Yeah. I do too.
So I look at those for those, but for girls, usually musical theater, nothing's too low or too high to really, in general. There are some that go too low, but I can maneuver around at the first rehearsal and say I need some of this and some of that.
Sure.
So okay. I just mainly, especially in a callback where I can't have them do any part singing, I just make sure, do they have good pitch? Do they have good tone? Kind of things first, and then we develop the rest within the rehearsal process.
Gotcha. Okay. And what's the most challenging part of music directing in general?
Not being able to control other people's voices.
Gotcha.
I
okay.
mean, and that's something that I've really had to work with within my own psyche of going, I can't control anybody else. So if I get frustrated over something somebody else is doing, that's only affecting me, because it's not going to affect anybody else, because I can't control that.
Right.
I can just guide them and motivate them to do it, and if not, I know that that's their choice or their inability to.
Right. I mean, you still feel that responsibility though for the show.
Right, and that's the hard thing. It's like I have this responsibility, and this is hard with teaching too, is my whole livelihood is based on other people.
Gotcha.
That I can't make do anything.
Right. Sure. You can motivate them as much as you can.
Right. But if I, like, for instance, if I need them to articulate so that we understand them, and then they choose not to, and then we get all these reviews about how the music director should have taught them to articulate because I couldn't understand anything, and it ruined the show because we didn't understand the story.
Right.
the only person they're looking at is the person who taught the music, when
Yeah.
in reality we tried, but it just didn't work. Thankfully, that hasn't happened.
Right. Okay.
But I mean, because of that perfectionist that we talked about before, I try to make sure that anything that my name is on is at the utmost quality that it can be.
Sure.
And when it's not getting to that level, I put that pressure on myself.
Right.
When I know it's only me putting it on myself. But I see that through, but I can't just do that for them.
Right.
I have to trust that they will. And thankfully, like I said, with Mamma Mia and every show that I've done, it gets there and it's brilliant and they've done amazing things. But that pressure that I put on myself is because I can't just do it myself.
Gotcha. Well, I was going to say, I don't think I've ever seen a bad review of yours anyway.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I actually went online and looked at all the reviews that I knew that you'd music directed, and it was like, music was awesome. Music was awesome. So, yeah. Okay. Well, then this is the other aspect of Legally Blonde specifically. You were also cast as Professor Callahan. How did that come about?
Basically, they said that we didn't have a Callahan, and Alex looks at me and goes, "Do you want to audition?" I said, "No."
Okay.
And he said, then he just kept pushing and pushing.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just said, fine, just to get out of being pushed to do so. And then I
Sure.
sang, and they're like, "And you're the part." And I'm like, "What?"
Gotcha.
Oh, okay.
Gotcha. Huh.
And I'm one, and other people can do it, but I'm one that I don't like being on both sides of it, because I can't focus in on one thing.
Gotcha. Sure.
I can't, if I'm on stage acting, I can't be listening to music because I'm not going to be fully enveloped in the character. I'm going to be listening if the cutoffs are there, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
If I'm doing the part, the opposite, anyway, I lost my train of thought on that. But anyway, I'm not focused on either way.
Right.
And so with that, I didn't feel like I really got into Callahan until like we had to, because we were running the show. And at that point, I couldn't be giving music notes anymore because I told myself I have to be focused on Callahan because that's
Right.
what's important now. They're going to see if I'm not fully into the character, if I'm not playing that. And so, I mean, the music ended up being great.
Yeah.
But that was what was hard for me, is because I had to individualize. I couldn't try to do both at the same time because
Sure.
it wasn't fair to either side of the situation.
Yeah. Gotcha.
So if I had it my way, I would have just music directed.
Sure.
And I freaking loved playing the part. Like,
Yeah.
looking back, like I love playing the villain. I love it.
The villain is way better than the main person.
So much.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and you said before that you love Legally Blonde too.
Right.
So I'm sure that it was ultimately a good experience and a dream
Oh,
come true and
totally.
everything.
Oh, totally.
So,
And I
yeah.
never thought that I would like to play Callahan. Like that's not the part that I would love. I actually didn't like his song. Like that was the one
Gotcha.
that I kept skipping past
Interesting, because
when I listened to the Broadway track.
right,
But now I love the song now that I got to sing it.
right,
So it was just really interesting because it was like nothing that I ever thought that I wanted to do, playing the part, singing the part, anything.
Right.
And ended up having a really good time doing it.
sure, gotcha. Well, I don't know if you know, but I played Callahan too out at
That's
the
right.
Empress Theater.
That's right.
And I was the same way before doing the show. I auditioned for Emmett out there. I'll take anything. And they asked me to come do Professor Callahan, which I was like, oh, this is cool, but this is also really like nerve wracking because it's obviously I'm not like an older gentleman and everything like that. So, but something that I guess you don't think about is the acting part of these songs.
Right.
And Blood in the Water is so much fun to act.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. You just get, yeah. So that's awesome. Well, cool. So what was hard about bringing that character to life beyond the music director versus actor kind of thing?
I think once I was able to just focus in on it, I don't know if I had any difficulties.
Okay, cool.
I have an easier time getting into character. And I don't have like a process. It's easy for me to think like the character.
Okay, cool.
And when I'm on stage in that character, I'm not Jason anymore.
Right.
I am the character, and my thoughts are the character, and that's what helps me motivate with what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always had because I am very, very much a character actor.
Okay.
And I don't know how it developed because it always has just been the case.
Sure.
For me, the hardest thing is what do I do with my hands?
I had the
That's
same thing.
always I'm painfully aware that my hands are just flopping by my side. What do I do? And I am very meticulous with my students about mannerisms. Like,
Gotcha.
if your hands by your side, you are not in character yet. You cannot be in character until your
Interesting.
hands are doing something specific.
Okay.
So then that makes me very meticulous about what are my hands doing? What are
Gotcha.
Callahan's hands? What are his nervous hands? What are his walking hands? What are his angry hands? And so I end up thinking about that more than I'm thinking about the lines.
Gotcha.
And then my eyes glaze over because my brain's going, what are your hands doing?
Right. Interesting. Okay. That's funny because I never heard that before. Like I get it for sure. If your hands are not doing anything, they're just down at their sides, then,
Right. What's
you're not in
defining
it.
your character? 'Cause
Right.
Everyone has hands by their side.
But at the same token, I've gotten feedback from a bunch of directors like you have this nervous tick with your hands. Mostly mine is playing with clothes. That's a big one for sure. But there was a point where I would just put my hands in my pockets.
Right.
That's all I would do. Is that something like,
For me, that's a trap.
okay,
Because
trap.
I do that to trap my hands so they're not doing anything. And so if my hands are in my pocket as an actor, Jason is trapping his hands, not the character.
Gotcha.
If
Okay.
I'm folding my arms as a character, Jason is trapping his hands, not the character.
Right.
I mean, yes, there are specific moments for hands in pockets and folding arms
Sure.
as a character. But if that's your general mannerism for the character, you're trapping your hands because you don't know what else to do with them.
Okay.
Just my thoughts.
Sure. So I don't know if you even noticed this, but watching Legally Blonde, were you super frustrated with me? Because that's all I did. I folded my arms and I put my hands in my pockets.
No,
Okay.
no, I don't, because I don't put that judgment on other actors if
Gotcha.
I'm not the director.
Sure.
If I were the director, I would say, Michael, are those your mannerisms or is that
Gotcha.
Emmett's mannerisms? Because I always tell my students, I'm like, are you playing with your shirt because that's what you do? Is that the character?
Right.
Oh, that's what I do. Okay, then don't do that.
Gotcha.
Like,
Sure. Okay. Cool. Well then, yeah, that's perfect. And Legally Blonde closed, and I'm sure that was an awesome experience for you. Were you still keeping in touch with Midvale? How did Spring Awakening come about?
Yes.
Basically?
So
Okay.
right near the end of Legally Blonde, Tammy had pulled me aside and said, "These are the next shows. What shows do you want
Okay.
to
Cool.
help with?"
You just
And
had free reign.
Well, ish. One, because I had to deal with what my schedule was doing with school.
Right. Sure.
And I think she'd already had a couple others signed up to be music directors. So she
Okay.
said, "These are the available ones. Which one do you want?" And I freaking loved Spring Awakening.
Yeah.
And I think she said specifically she wanted me because she's like, "I need the music to be really good within this,"
Sure.
which I took like obviously as a really big compliment.
Huge compliment.
And then I saw the score and I'm like, "Oh, this is ridiculous."
Oh man.
But I love the music in that show. I mean,
Yeah.
bias as a music person, there's other great things, but the music is just so well written.
Absolutely.
In that show.
Absolutely. So then perfect. You come into Spring Awakening and you said that you looked at the score and it was challenging, it sounded like.
Oh yeah.
Okay. So why so? And how did you work through that? And how did you get it ready to come to a rehearsal process?
It was just difficult because there's a lot of times in musical theater, it's like the same thing just repeated. Like I love Rocky Horror Picture Show, but it is the same
my
chord
gosh.
progression. Once you teach two measures, you know the whole song. And
Right.
As a music director, sometimes you like that because you're like, now I can be more meticulous on other things because they're not going to take forever to learn their part.
Right.
Whereas Spring Awakening is every single part's moving at a different time with a different rhythm, with different words, and then trying to get the timing of that to go down. And then are we going to articulate together? Are they going to understand what we're saying? You look at that and go, am I going to just barely get the part correct? And then we open the show.
Right.
So just finding the pacing to get everything at the right moment. Before you even know the talent or caliber of actors you're going to have.
Gotcha. Yeah. And I'm sure that's the most like nerve-wracking,
Right.
excited part, like you would say. Sorry.
Exactly.
The exciting part of it. But when you came to those callbacks and everything like that, were you like, what were your thoughts as far as the talent of the cast goes? And that's
Thank God.
It's a weird question for me to ask because I
Right.
was part of it. But yeah,
Right, no, because that was such a strong cast
That's-
in every way.
I think vocally especially, that was the most talented cast that I've been a part of.
Yeah.
For sure.
Oh
So,
yeah.
Well, cool. And like I say, I mean, it seemed like it went well and everything like
Oh
that.
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah. I mean,
perfect.
yes, there were still hiccups because of the music difficulty
Mhm.
and things, but the end product was
Phenomenal.
very beautifully done.
For sure. I ask that because it was the first, I guess I hadn't noticed it during Legally Blonde. I'm sure it was still there, but it was the first time that I had worked with you and you had really focused on dynamics and cutoffs, like you were saying, and everything like that. And it seems like I love every music director that I've ever been with, but I especially love working with you for that reason. Why are those aspects of music something that you like to focus on?
For me, dynamics is what creates the texture.
Texture.
If
Okay.
everything is the same, then there's the the element of changing within it is what piques our interest. The second something changes, that's when your awareness to it is brought back to it.
Gotcha.
And so if you're hearing changes frequently, then you're constantly bringing awareness to something changing and therefore thinking about the music. Cutoffs are what differentiate between a group of people on stage just drunkily singing karaoke or something that was meticulous and together.
Right.
And so that, to me, is where it goes from okay to polish, is if they all came cut off together, there's an energy on that cutoff. It happens at the same time.
Definitely.
So that it sounds polished, and then with the dynamics, there's texture. And so that's why it's important for me for those two things.
Gotcha. Well, and it's funny. I mentioned that because Mamma Mia, I love everyone working on it and everything like that. I don't like the show. Yeah. I've said that on this podcast before, but I was so close to auditioning just because like you were a part of it and Nick was a part of it. But I was just so excited to see that you were doing it, I guess. So, well, cool. And Spring Awakening closed and everything like that. And Rocky Horror was right after Spring Awakening, right? And that one, how did that come about?
Ryan had asked me about that one.
Okay.
So Ryan had come to talk to me. And I'd known the movie, but I'd recently been like, it just happened to align that I had watched it again. And, I was Frankenfurter for like Halloween, or recently around that same time.
Gotcha.
And so it was on my mind, and then I knew he was doing it, and then like secretly I was like, I hope that he asked me to music direct.
Right.
And then he did. I'm like, eee! Awesome. So then I got to, so that was the guess.
So you watched the movie and still wanted to work on it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've told this on the podcast too, but like I watched that movie and I hated the show. Like
Tim Curry is the utter brilliance.
I didn't even get to
human being.
I didn't even get to that part of the show. Is the problem? It was halfway through Damn It, Janet, and I was like, okay, I'm done. I don't get it. Yeah.
If your epitome of that show is on Damn It, Janet, then yes, I can understand why you're like, what the hell? But once you get past that filter of just going, oh, this is bizarre, but I'm going to go with it.
Right.
Then it becomes another thing. But I got to Tim Curry and I left it Tim Curry and everything else was Tim Curry.
Yeah.
So like,
he's so good in it.
So brilliant. Like him and Ellen Greene in Little Shop of Horrors are the two epitome of I just watch and just draw. Why am I saying draw? Jaw dropped like brilliance.
Right.
Those two in musical movies are my go-to of you need to base your life off of these people.
It's kind of sad that there's only two of those.
True.
But yeah, no, I get it.
I mean, there's more, but they're like the top.
Right.
Of
for sure.
That list.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay, so this leads into Rocky Horror specifically, and I ask this because I was part of the cast. I was a big part of the cast. When you work with someone who isn't what you think of going into the audition, if that makes sense. Like you have this idea of what the character should be, and then you go into the audition and you have to or get to cast someone that doesn't match that.
Right.
How do you reconcile the two? How do you kind of bring that person to what you want it to be? If that makes sense.
I love this question because I am a firm believer of every show should be different and that every character should be a different way that it's seen. And I'm a firm believer that the actor is the one that brings it out. And so, when we get what we get at auditions and so on, I get excited because I'm like, okay, when they're like, well, that's not maybe how it's normally done. I'm like, that excites me.
Me too.
The second you say that, that's what gets me excited because it shouldn't be.
Right.
And who is to say that this has to forever be the way that it is done?
Right.
The whole movement of Hamilton, I think, gets me excited with that because race doesn't matter that you cast. Even gender may not matter on who you cast. Because it's about the story that they're telling. We can make it work with the actor and their abilities because that's what we get, and they get to be able to be the one. But are they the overall? Are they telling the story that the original script needs to be?
Right.
Character can be how it's portrayed by the actor and how they want it to do. That doesn't matter. So I was nothing but excited.
Awesome. Cool. Well, I ask again because that Riff Raff is who I played in that show, and that's such a freaking hard song to sing. Yeah. So yeah, that's all that was. But yeah, I mean that all makes sense for sure, and I'm glad you said that too because that was really what was exciting for me about that show.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if it was either right before or right after. I think it was right after the callbacks when I got the part. Ryan took me aside or whatever and told me that he didn't want to see anything that had been done before,
Right.
which was really actually relieving for me because
you're
I'm
not a high screechy tenor,
right. I'm not Richard
and I remember
O'Brien.
having that conversation, and I'm like, why does that matter? Just
Yeah.
because one person played it that way does not mean that is riffraff.
Right. And it's, I think part of that for me was that this is such a beloved character,
Right.
So there always was that little bit of an expectation in my mind, but ultimately I'm really proud of especially the character that I brought to that,
Right.
And I feel like that's something that should be celebrated.
Right. Oh, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. Well, unless I'm mistaken, those are kind of the 3 shows that you've done here, and then you did revivals of those 2 shows, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Until Mamma Mia.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. I just ask because these.
Well, because I actually did the revival of Next to Normal.
Oh, you did. Okay, gotcha. Cool.
So that could fit in the revival category of it.
Yes, but okay. So we'll go to Next to Normal then. That was the first show that you'd seen at Midvale,
Right.
so you had kind of that in the back of your mind, I'm sure. But what did you want to bring to that show in particular? I guess.
The music is so well done, and I wanted just to make sure that the little details in the harmonies and things were really brought forth.
Okay.
And that the choral singing of the aspect of the show was brought there too.
Gotcha. Okay. And again, that's not something that is really focused on necessarily in musical theater productions, choir of it, So cool. I mean, was there anything particularly challenging with that show or anything like that?
The music is insane in that show too.
Okay.
The blessing and a curse was that all but one of that cast was the same. And when we went in, a bunch of them had to relearn some stuff because they didn't have either the harmony wasn't correct or something they had to relearn within it, and so their muscle memory from before had to be slightly altered or changed or to fit the vision that I had for it.
Right.
So that was probably the most difficult thing. Especially with how musical that show is and how much music there is.
Right. And it's only 5 or 6 actors, I think. So, yeah.
Yeah. I remember Cassidy just loving me, in quotes, because I was really meticulous with certain things. And at the time, I think she got really frustrated with me. But now she's come up to me and thanked me for things that I was able to help her with. But
well, and that's true for me, too. It's nothing I've ever vocalized to you, but it's really like you push people.
Right.
You want it to be perfect. And sometimes when you're in those rehearsals, it's like, oh, we've done this part like 5 times.
Right.
Can we just move on? But you look back on these and it's just incredible. So, yeah, that's cool. Well, then going from those and going into Spring Awakening and Rocky Horror again, redoing a show that you've already done before, do you want to build on what you've done, or is it something you have to start from scratch and
kind of both?
Okay.
I mean, it was easier because both of those shows were during a school year, and I try not to music direct too much during school, but I was like, I already know the music, so this is going to make it a little bit easier.
Sure.
I plan a few things beforehand, but I also try to, in the moment, figure out what is the energy of this group? What is this group going to be able to do? How meticulous can I be with these things? How much can I relax on these things based on what I'm hearing in rehearsals? Which sounds like you relax on things. What?
Right.
But I find that out at the beginning. And so that way, when they're relaxing on them later, I can say, no. I set this precedent when I heard that you can do this before. That's why I'm getting after you right now on it, because I know that you're capable of it.
Gotcha.
But
Can't
I
argue
also,
with that.
right. But I also make sure that I'm aware I have different vocalists with different vocal qualities, with different vocal needs. And I want to make sure that I'm staying true to their true voice, not what somebody else has already done.
Right.
Because they're never going to do what somebody else done. Thank God.
Yeah.
So
like we were talking about.
I'm bringing awareness to that as well.
Gotcha. Cool. Well, that's awesome. It's something that, it's kind of a weird phenomenon having these shows be revived and not being a part of them. Right. So it's just something I'm always curious about with all my guests. But cool. Well, that leads me into what you're doing now, Mamma Mia. And we've already kind of talked about how awesome and talented this cast is and everything. This is going to be a weird question that you may not have a good answer to.
I'm ready.
We have some older people in this show. It's not something that we usually see at Midvale. How is it different teaching older people versus younger people, if there's a difference at all?
There's not.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, I never look at it that way. This cast, vocally phenomenal. I know when I first met with Julie, Andrea, and Camille, they were a little blown away with how meticulous I was being.
Sure.
And then they've come up and said, "Whoa, thank you, we appreciate that." I just have never had someone be that not ridiculous, meticulous,
Right.
with certain things.
Well, and you would expect, and this is, I'm sure, not true of them with what you're saying, but people that have done shows for so long have it in this, they just have how this is supposed to go in their mind,
Right.
So that makes sense for sure. And you hear those three do their 3-part harmonies in this show, and
Right.
you're just like on the floor for
Right.
sure. So, cool. Well, we're just about to open. We're opening.
Not to say that you're older ladies, you are brilliant
You
human
are
beings.
beautiful. You look not a day over 25.
That's right.
Anyway, so we're about to open Mamma Mia. What do you want an audience member to take away from the show? And it doesn't have to be music. It could just be whatever comes to mind.
I think this is the epitome of why we do music theater.
Okay.
The energy of the show, even though if ABBA isn't your cup of tea,
Like me.
and that's fine. The energy behind the music, the connectiveness between the cast. There is something that happens in musical theater that is why it's so important than any other kind of performing arts, because there's an audience to actor connection, and you leave a better person when it's done correct, because of that connection. It can't be done in movies because you have that screen in between. There's no connection there.
Right.
But when you have that connection where you are lifted up as a human being, where you are made a better person, and actors feel it too, and the audience gives it back to you.
Yeah.
There's this psychic connection that happens that because of the energy of this cast, because of the unitedness that this cast has, that's going to transfer to the audience.
Sure.
And the audience will receive it, and they're going to give it back to the actor. And because it's going to continue throughout the whole show, everyone's going to leave a better person for having experienced it.
Cool.
That's what I'm really excited for people to get to witness. Yes, the story is what it is.
Sure.
But the music is upbeat and exciting. But I think more than anything, it is this energy that the cast is going to give the audience, and I know the audience is going to give right back. That is just going to lift everyone involved that is in that audience on stage, in the theater, during the process. That's going to be what people need to be part of.
Well, and I love that you're saying that, because obviously it's not my show, but I'm running mics and I see how much everyone is in love with the show when they're on stage. And you're right. It's very unique, especially at the community level. You, like, the audience member is right there and you can feel what they're giving to you, and it lifts you up and makes you a better performer, better person, like you were saying. So that's awesome. I'm so excited for it to open. I'm sure you're excited for multiple reasons, including that you don't have to worry about it anymore. Yeah, that's very cool. And, I wish you luck with it, I guess.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. It's been awesome. So, like I say, I'm going to see you around, so you're not getting rid of me. But yeah, sounds good. Well, we'll see you later, I guess. Yeah. Hope you have a good one.
You too.
Thanks.
I mean, and people watching, listening, whatever. I'm done.
Yep. All right. Bye-bye. As always, the Midvale Main Street Theatre podcast is sponsored, funnily enough, by the Midvale Main Street Theatre. Check out new and exciting updates on everything going on at the Midvale Main Street Theatre by going to www.midvaletheatre.com, or check them out on Facebook and Instagram at Midvale Main Street Theatre. You can find show notes and much more by going to our podcast's Facebook page at facebook.com/MMSTpodcast. Special thanks to Ashley Howell, Joel Clark, and Matthew Petrucci for help making this show happen. I owe you guys the world. I've been Michael Howell, and this has been the Midvale Main Street Theatre podcast. The views expressed have been mine alone and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Midvale Main Street Theatre, its owners, or volunteers. If you've liked what you've heard today, please consider finding the Midvale Main Street Theatre podcast on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, or whatever podcast listener you're using, and dropping us a 5-star review. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at MMST Podcast. Thank you very much, and until next time, we'll see ya.